Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Besbris, and today we're covering the Portland Trail Blazers as we journey through the teams of the NBA. Hit that like button. Do it now. Subscribe, however you're taking in the content. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, 5-star review would certainly go a long way. Let's start by taking a look at the overall Blazers roster. I'm using Yahoo today because I'm much more comfortable with that. This is what the roster looks like. Players that we will be talking about on today's show include Deni Avdija, Toumani Camara, Donovan Clingan, Jeremy Grant, Scoot Henderson, Jrue Holiday, and Shaedon Sharpe. We're going to jump over Yang Han-Set because I'm not convinced that he's going to be doing a ton right out of the gate, although the Blazers certainly are amassing arguably the biggest and heaviest front court in the entire NBA. So that's what the roster looks like. Coming off a season where the Blazers went 36-46 last year, and by all accounts, overachieved in every respect. It was a team that a lot of us thought would probably be in tank mode at some point, but it took them really until like the last 10 days to kind of fully pull the plug. There was a stretch, I might be getting this wrong, but I think the Blazers won like 9 games in a row in the middle of the season. They had a sort of an easier schedule during that span, but that doesn't matter. When you're not a good team, what is an easy schedule anyway? Portland only missed the play-in tournament by 3 games this year. And say what you will about what they've done so far this offseason, which we're going to talk about in a second. This is a team that tried to compete last year, locked up Chauncey Billups for a while because they like him. And that lends itself to the thought that they'll probably try to compete again. So let's talk about the first name on our list, and that's Donovan Clingan, who I think we got to enjoy him a little bit down the stretch this last year. Overall on the year, the numbers are not all that impressive. 6.5 points, 8 rebounds, an assist, 1.6 blocks, half a steal, 54% from the field. Even that you could look at and say could be a little bit better. A meager 60% at the free throw line, which we always kind of knew was going to be a shortcoming in Clingan's game. But that was on 19 minutes and 46 seconds a ball game, roughly 20 minutes a night. The season changed for Clingan as it went on. His minutes trended up as the closer whoever got, to the end of the year. Over his final 25 games, he played 25 minutes a night, 8 points, 10 rebounds, 2.5 defensive stats combined, still about the same field goal free throw percent. But all of a sudden now you're talking about a guy who was right around top 100 value in full 9-cat and much better than that in punt free throw. Additionally, if you go even later in the season and look at the last 15 games instead of the last 25, Donovan was playing 27 minutes a night, 8.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, still around 2.5 combined defensive stats per game, still around 50 some odd on the 2 percentages. Turnovers were weirdly a little bit lower. Feel like that's more random than anything else. But this is a guy now that was top 75 production in 9-cat. Again, even without a punt. If you were punting free throw, Donovan Clingan was top 40 down the stretch last year. He didn't help as much as we might like in field goal percent. That's probably the thing you point at and go, that feels like it should get better for a guy who's 7'2", 280. Some of that's going to be who he's playing with, and some of it is just sort of an adjustment to the NBA game. 54% is fine, but not all that great for a massive big man. And so we'll hope that maybe that gets a little bit better, although it's also worth noting he did attempt about a 3-pointer, a little bit more per game down the stretch. So that's not helping his field goal percent overall. Still, the Blazers let go of DeAndre Ayton. Bought him out. He's a Laker now. And so their center depth didn't necessarily take a hit per se because they added Young in, maybe I would say Young. I think it's Young in the draft, but the pecking order did. So before it was like, oh, well, DeAndre Ayton's going to be the starter as long as he's quote unquote healthy. And then we're going to kind of shut him down And, Time Lord's going to get a little bit of playing time here and there. And Duop Reith is going to get a little bit of playing time here and there. But, Donovan Clingan, you'll get yours. You'll get like half the minutes once we remove DeAndre Ayton from the equation. And that just continued to grow. You could see, again, we talked about this, the last 15 games, he was up around 27 minutes per game. And it continued that way. Last 10 games, he was at 28 minutes per game. Everything continuing to trend upward, almost in a linear fashion. 9.2 points, 10.7 rebounds in his last 10 games last year, 2.7 combined defensive stats. So every minute he was out on the court, his value just slowly kept getting bumped higher and higher. Last 7 games last year, 28 minutes per night, 10.3 points, 11.7 rebounds. Again, 2.7 combined defensive stats. This is a guy who was doing a lot when he was given the playing time. That was a top 69 category performance. What do I think this year holds? I mean, it feels pretty reasonable to assume that he's going to get those 26, 27, 28-ish minutes per game right out of the chute. He's their center of the now and the future, and he probably falls maybe a tiny bit behind the guys we talk about in the Jarrett Allen corridor, the centers all getting drafted between 35 and 65. I don't know that you go certainly not near the front end of that range, but I wouldn't have that big of an issue if folks wanted to take Clingan like near the end of the 6th round, 60, 65, you wedge yourself into the beginning of the 7th round. That's totally fine. To me, the floor is 100. 25 minutes a game gets him to top 100. And anything over that, he just continues to grow. 26 minutes, he's probably top 80 something. 27 minutes, we just talked about it. He's in the 60s. 28 minutes, he's in the 50s. 29 minutes, he might still be in the 50s. 30 minutes, he's probably in the 40s. So that's the upside there for a guy that, again, I think we look at taking Clingan somewhere near 65, but let's see roughly how this all, draft-wise shakes out. BetOnline time, everybody. You know the story at this point. BetOnline continues to be your number one source for sports betting action. Let's go through the list of things you can get down on over there. Baseball in full swing. Lots of baseball every day. WNBA, UFC, tennis, soccer, NFL futures. The list goes on and on and on. And BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering information, the latest odds, news, scores, and this is all the time, literally all the time, live in-game betting, because stuff is happening all over the world. Some games that might be 7 a.m. for me on the Pacific Coast, but in Australia, that's late at night the night before. No, I messed that up. But regardless, there's pretty much always something to do there. And if you happen to be online in that really weird little rare window where no sporting event is taking place, check out the BetOnline Casino. They get all the top Vegas-style games. Poker, a live casino. That's pretty damn cool. I've talked about blackjack on the show. And head to BetOnline today. Take advantage of the industry-leading VIP program. You've got level-up bonuses that kick in as you go. Weekly cash boosts to give you better odds on bets as you go. BetOnline, the game starts here. Next, we're going to go to Shaedon Sharpe, who is not exactly what you'd call a 9-category darling, but when he was playing a truly absurd number of minutes, he did manage to work his way into 9-category discussions. And that was basically down the stretch last year when the Blazers started playing all the young guys every minute they could handle. And Sharpe, over the last 13 games, basically the last month of the year, he missed a couple in there, he averaged 35 minutes a night, took 19 shots per game. It's a lot, in case you were wondering. 23 points, 6.3 boards, over 3 assists, 1.4 steals, 2.5 3-pointers. The percentages are not good for Sharpe, and I don't think that they're about to become good magically this coming season. That got him into the top 90 range without a punt. If you were punting free throw, he wedged a little higher. If you're punting field goal, he wedged a little higher. If you were punting turnovers, he actually pushed a tiny bit higher, but not, that one's sort of a little more artificial. So points leagues, I would say point league folks take note on Sharpe. I don't know. I don't think he's starting. My guess is that the Blazers' starting five is Jrue Holiday, Avdija, Camara, Clingan, and I guess it might be Sharpe. It could be Shaedon Sharpe, because remember, Anthony Simons is gone, and it doesn't seem like they want to start Scoot, but maybe that's the thing that... Oh, and Jeremy Grant. Ugh, Jeremy Grant. Forgot about Jeremy stinking Grant. Hopefully, Jeremy Grant is gone in the not-too-distant future, but easier said than done. So let's assume that Jeremy Grant is there and that Shaedon Sharpe is going to have to be a guy who comes off the bench and just jacks up shots. He kind of needs Grant to be gone. That's probably the time you take a look at Shaedon Sharpe. And again, you start in the points league side and you work your way towards 9-cat. I don't think I'm drafting him in 9-category leagues, even towards the end of drafts, because of the issues with percentages. But, of course, like, if the volume takes over, which I'm not super confident it will, that's how he starts to get himself into traditional 9-cat discussion. So punt builds, take a look. Points leagues, definitely consider straight 9-cat. Probably not the direction we're going, with the caveat that, again, like, you can see the game log on your screen, those that are watching on YouTube. When he was taking a billion shots a game, these lines were nuts. But, like, we can dig into the box score. Let's look at this game where he had put up 36, 7, and 5. It was a win in Toronto against the tanking Raptors. The starters for the Blazers also included Delano Banton, because Simons was out, Grant was out, and Avdija took 20 shots, Sharpe took 23, Banton took 19, Donovan Clingan took 6. This is how it is a possibility. If there's no Jeremy Grant and possibly no Jrue Holiday, but I don't think he's going to be a super high volume guy. They removed the highest volume guy on the team, which was Anthony Simons. So that puts Sharpe in a better position, but I don't really want him coming off the bench. Just a bench gunner role, not quite enough for me on the Shaedon side, but it's close. Let's keep a close watch on it and see how the next couple months shake out. Next player we're going to talk about on the Blazers is none other than old man Jrue Holiday, who had a mixed bag of a year for Boston last season. He actually closed the year pretty strong, but it took a long time to get to that point, and so we can't really say, oh, yeah, Jrue Holiday, but, like, yeah, he was top 80 the last month and a half, 2 months. 11 points, 4 boards, 4.5 assists, good steals, good percentages, couple of threes a game. Just, like, quiet producer across the board, decent in almost everything. And he did that on only 9.5 shots per game down the stretch for Boston. And frankly, overall on the year, he only took 9.2. I believe, and we talked about this when the Holiday trade went down, but I'll repeat it on today's show just to sort of make a point. I don't think we're going to get the Jrue Holiday of Philadelphia, New Orleans, or Milwaukee. Those days are done. He's an old goat, born in 1990. Ooh, a gray beard. Just had his 35th birthday. I'm older than all these guys by a good amount, but it doesn't matter. He's been in the NBA. Look how long he's been in the NBA. 2009. He's been in the NBA since then. But all that said, Jrue Holiday was on a Celtics team that had Jason Tatum taking almost 20 shots a game, Jaylen Brown taking almost 20 shots a game, Porzingis taking 14 or 15 shots a game, Derek White was taking a dozen shots a game or whatever it was. He goes to a Portland team that we just talked about, just unloaded their top usage guy. And yeah, I think Deni Avdija is going to do a lot. And we're going to talk about Deni in a minute here on today's show. And yeah, I think Shaedon Sharpe is going to take a bunch of shots. And Jeremy Grant is going to take a bunch of shots. But it's pretty easy to just look at Portland's shot breakdown from last year and compare it to the Celtics and say, look, you take Anthony Simons and his 16 shots a game out of the equation. You got Shaedon Sharpe at 15, which, by the way, kind of inflated by him taking 19 down the stretch. But still, let's say 15 or higher. DeAndre Ayton was taking a dozen. He's not there anymore. Donovan Clingan is not the offensive-minded center that Ayton was. So you actually put more usage back in the bucket that way. So now you got Scoot, Jeremy Grant, Deni Avdija, all these guys that are like, yeah, we don't like, we'll get between 10, 12, Avdija probably a little higher shots per game, but it leaves a ton left over. I'm not saying Jrue Holiday is going to take all of that left over and run with it. I do think that he takes more than 9.2 shots per game this year. And it's pretty easy because all you got to do is turn the clock back 1 year to see what Jrue Holiday was when he even got 10 shots per game for the Celtics. He was number 75. His field goal percent was higher, so perhaps that had something to do with it. But don't we think he can get to 10? I mean, Derek White in Boston took 11.5 shots per game. Do we think Jrue Holiday can get to 11 shots with the Blazers? Bearing in mind, again, that he was the 5th option on the Celtics and got 10 shots per game. You could even argue that Peyton Pritchard was ahead of him in the pecking order at times. Even if we say he's also the 5th option in Portland, let's see, who would we put him behind? Shaedon Sharpe, Jeremy Grant, Deni Avdija. I think he's kind of got to be 4th, doesn't he? Scoot? Can we say Scoot's ahead of him? That's how you get him to 5th? A little bit of a different 4 names that he'd be deferring to. So I think Jrue Holiday is actually in line to have a pretty good year. My hope is that he gets drafted around 100 because I'll be all over him at that point. And while we're talking about Scoot, let's pivot over to Scoot, actually. He's the next name on our list. And for Henderson, he's coming off a slightly better year in just overall efficiency, but a worse year statistically. You know, the turnovers were better, down from 3.4 to 2.7. The field goal percent was up from 38.5 to 42. 3-point percent was up by 3. Free throw percent went down, but I do think that that's probably something that'll just sort of level off over time. His scoring was down. Even his minutes were down. Is Scoot Henderson the point guard of the future on this Portland team? I still don't really know. It seems like they've been content to bring him off the bench. And if they're really trying to be a better team and continue to add wins year over year over year, he's not just going to get the job from Jrue Holiday, who by all accounts, the Blazers went out and got. They gave up Anthony Simons and picks to get the higher salaried player and the longer salaried player, if I'm remembering right. So I don't know that anything really changes for Scoot. He's not a guy that's on my radar all that much this coming year. I think he's a punt, field goal, assists, maybe specialist, but I'm going to have to see something big out of the preseason and training camp for me to go, oh yeah, it's Scoot time, which is basically like, I need to see him starting over Jrue Holiday and looking like the Blazers are ready to truly invest in him if I'm going to take the plunge on Scoot Henderson. Because right now, I am not particularly inclined to do so. 3 more names. Let's talk about arguably the most annoying player to roster in all of fantasy basketball, and that is Jeremy Grant, who has not played a game in April in 5 years. It's the greatest stat on planet Earth. I believe the last time he played a game, it wasn't March. It was April. He hasn't played a game in April since the Bubble Nuggets run, which actually maybe he didn't play a game in April because the NBA was shut down that year. Is it 2019 now with OKC the last time he played a game in April? I'm not going to look it up live on air. You guys can. But it's been 4, 5, or 6 years. I'm not positive which one the correct answer is. But he's cashing checks, man. And he's right back in the same spot again. I have no idea why Portland extended the crap out of Jeremy Grant a year and whatever ago. But they did it, and now they're on the hook for it. And he's just not a good basketball player anymore. All the things that made him enticing during that bubble run with Denver, defense, even a little bit of rebounding, heaven forbid, a little bit of rebounding. He wasn't super efficient, but he was efficient enough. All of that is gone. Dude shot 37% from the field this last year. That is way down below what it needs to be. He's out there for 32, 33 minutes a game, and he's grabbing 3.5 rebounds out of the power forward spot a lot of the time. Absolute dumpster fire of a fantasy player. I want nothing to do with Jeremy Grant. He will be probably phased out again as the year goes, and Portland's probably going to have to attach picks to get off of that contract. But someone out there that's just leaning into a rebuild will probably go, yeah, we'll take Jeremy off your hands, and we'll squat on him for a couple of years, but you got to give us a first. And Portland's going to balk at it, But at some point, they're going to be like, yeah, we got to get out from this. This contract is bad. And they'll take an expiring back, and they'll probably waive that player, and all of a sudden this problem will be solved. But you don't want Jeremy Grant on your fantasy team. He is going to miss a ridiculous number of games. And if you look at how it's gone, he signed that first contract with Detroit, and he missed 18 games. That was a shorter season, remember. Then he missed 35, 19, 28, 35 again. He ain't playing, folks. It's not happening. You don't want it. The only universe where Jeremy Grant should be on your fantasy team is if you are in a hard punt big man stats looking for a power forward. But you got to be aware he's probably not going to be playing in your fantasy playoffs anyway. And so that kind of wipes out both formats. If you wanted him in Roto, you shouldn't because he's not very good. If you wanted him in head-to-head for that team build, he's not going to be playing when you need him. Why bother? Jeremy Grant, ... Why bother? Here's a cat who's going to play a bunch again next year, and that's Toumani Camara. The Blazers love this dude, and he is everything that a glue player should be, and they're hoping he can become more than that. It's a really good starting point, though. When you're like the perfect glue guy in your second season in the NBA, and there's an opportunity to maybe get better, he's not the youngest third-year player. So that's something to think about. Like, he's 25 already. So how many more gears are there? Probably some. But, like, this is a dude who was straight up good last year. Shot 46% from the field. That was good enough. Made 1.7 threes. That was decent. Free throw percent leaves a little something to be desired, but he doesn't take almost any. Got the rebounds up to around 6 last year. 1.5 steals, 0.6 blocks. There was a lot to like about Toumani Camara. And at the end of it all, he managed to sort of wiggle his way just barely inside the top 100 in 9-cat as a low turnover guy. He was better than that, though, as the season went on. He got slightly, it's not a ton, but slightly more usage. Basically, first half of the season, he was taking like 8.5 shots a game. Second half of the season, he was around 10. But that makes a difference when you're a guy who's only averaging like 10 points. That can jump up to 13. So the second half of the year, he was at 13, 6, and 2.5, 2.4 combined defensive stats. Good field goal percent. Again, not great free throw. And you can trace the line with a lot of these Blazers. Like, the young guys just got better as the year went on. He took 10.6 shots his final 25 games of the year. He took 11.6 shots his final 15 games of the year as they continued to remove other usage guys, meaning Jeremy Grant got his usual shutdown. Anthony Simons was partially shut down during that stretch. These guys are gone. I like Toumani Camara. I don't know what he's going to be, but he reminds me a lot, fantasy-wise, of Keegan Murray without any of the fanfare. Because Keegan got a ton of fanfare, mostly because he was hitting a bunch of three-pointers, but they are very similar in fantasy makeup. Keegan's a little bit more reliable because he's a better foul shooter and seemingly a slightly better shot blocker. But the points, the rebounds, the assists, the steals, the field goal percent are all almost exactly the same with those two guys. But Keegan has generally been costing you, a 65 to 90 range pick. And I feel like Camara is going to go later than that. Maybe not. Maybe people are higher on him than I realize. But I think we're going to be able to get Toumani probably like Jrue Holiday range. Like, I think I'm going to end up with a bunch of Blazers on my team next year. Because Kamara is only 25 years old, but he has the fantasy game of an old man, which is like good on steals, percentages that are fine, but not good or all that bad. Some rebounds, some threes, some blocks. It's a lot of sort of like some. But when you roll it all together, he ends up pretty damn useful. So I like Toumani Camara. I don't know where he's going to go. I don't even have a clue where he's going to go in drafts because I don't know how much everybody else is going to like him, but I like him a lot. And I would say put him on the target list. And let's finish up the Blazers chat with Deni Avdija, who is a popcorn stat collector's dreamboat. Absolute dreamboat. If you look at the last 2 months of this most recent fantasy season, when Avdija was kind of cut loose for the first time. He played 34 minutes a game, averaged 23, 10, and 5. Whopper popcorn stats. 2.5 3-pointers, a steal. He even shot 51% from the field over that stretch. High volume free throw guy. He does get fouled, and he was better than usual over that stretch at 78%. But I have to admit, I'm a little bit worried about what that number actually settles at. Still, it's hard to argue with the fact that over the last month, Avdija was basically a first rounder. 26, 10, and 6 with 3 threes and 51-83 splits. He should be on everybody's sleeper board. Deni Avdija, he's probably not even a sleeper at this point. Everybody was awake to him by the end of last year. And I think it was Thunder Dan, actually, that was on this pod last draft season that was like, keep a close watch on Avdija. And for the most part last year, he only excelled when a couple of guys were out. But that was also the case down the stretch when they just removed different guys from the equation. No Ayton, no Simons, no Grant. Jeremy will probably start the year healthy, and that's going to put a dent into players' usages. But with no Simons, that puts so much back in the hands of Avdija, who's a point forward effectively. And it's one of the reasons that they haven't needed to push more onto Scoot Henderson. What I don't know is where Deni's going to get drafted. Is he going to be one of those guys where everybody's like, I got to take him at 45 because I want to make sure I catch the breakout? Or are you going to be able to get him at like 70 and hope for the, everything breaking the right direction? Because if he falls, you're going to want him. But we got to figure out where he's going. He's going to probably be a hype train guy also. Start as a sleeper where if you draft in the middle of August, you'll probably be able to get him at like 80. And then if you're drafting in October, which we do, you're probably going to have to get him 2 rounds earlier than that. But it might be worth it. Because I don't really see a way that he doesn't get to do a lot. He was doing a lot down the stretch last year, and Simons played in a lot of those games. I think he only sat out like the last week and a half. Avdija posted crazy numbers down the stretch. Crazy numbers. The turnovers were problematic. He was at 4 a game during that span, but like last 6 games Deni played in, and then he also took the last few games off. He averaged 28, 11, and 6. Those are Giannis numbers. He's not Giannis, but he's a big dude, and he can do a lot of stuff. So be ready to pounce because Avdija is going to be the hype train player of the year probably. And we got to figure out between now and October how high we're willing to go. And that is your Portland Trail Blazers. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I am headed to Vegas for NBA Summer League. Just 2 days of it. Then I got to come back because we got a family trip to a Little League tournament. It's a busy week for old Danny boy. No shows from me Thursday or Friday of this week. Thanks so much for watching. Again, like, rate, and subscribe on your way out. And we'll catch up with you first thing next week. I think that's pretty much when all of us here on Old Man Squad are going to be back because Kingy's in the States. We'll be seeing him. Noah is also going to be in Vegas. Actually, all the hosts here on Old Man Squad right now are going to be convening in Vegas. If you want us, well, you can probably find me at the craps table. Later, everybody. Maybe if I survive it.